Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Good evening, friends, and welcome to this Thursday evening, 13 August 2015 edition of Nightcast. Our opening story tonight, friends, thousands of people are spending the night in temporary shelters in the Chinese city of Tianjin after the two massive explosions we told you about yesterday at the industrial port. At least 50 people were killed and more than 700 injured, but many are still missing, and the death toll is expected to rise.
It was with daybreak that the full extent of the destruction became clear. A modern industrial zone in one of China's biggest cities had been blown apart.
Whoa! Oh! What the? Holy! No way! Oh shit! Are you filming? Yes, I'm filming! Wow! Wow! I think we are dead. Let's go!
The first explosion was equivalent to 3 tons of TNT. The second, 21 tons. The blast wave rocked buildings miles away and was detected in the US as a seismic event. Tianjin's hospitals have been overwhelmed, having to turn some of those with minor injuries away. The wider country is watching these scenes with horror and disbelief.
We saw fire but didn't expect there would be explosions. I was actually quite far away from the explosion site. I was working at the security booth and suddenly I heard the bang. I lay down immediately, but still got injured. The security booth was destroyed completely.
Suddenly there was an explosion. Then I heard another burst. I escaped and I was running away. I got blood all over my body.
Well, this is pretty much the front line of where the emergency workers have come to. You can see some of the fire crews taking a break, and if we walk this way, you can see the giant stacks of containers on the site. The explosion has tumbled them down, broken and buckling them as it's done so, and you can see that thick black acrid smoke still billowing from the site, and you can taste that smell of burning hanging heavy in the air. The fire burned so intensely here that in places the metal ran molten and the cars are still hot to touch. And this scene of burnt and blackened cars stretches in every direction, row after row, as far as the eye can see. These dormitory buildings for migrant workers were all but flattened. When the third blast came, the whole thing collapsed, this man tells me. And at this nearby apartment complex, almost every window in every building has been blown out. An extraordinary force tearing through hundreds of family homes with lethal effect. I feel very lucky to be alive, this man says. But industrial accidents with large-scale loss of life are all too common in a system in which profit and political connections are often put before safety concerns. The emergency in Tianjin is far from over. The fire is still burning, and there's the added fear that the hazardous chemicals that were stored here may now be spread over a wide area.
And that was BBC's John Sudworth with that report. Thank you, John. As he was telling you there, the blast took place in a storage area handling gas and toxic chemicals. And the fears that remain are that there will be widespread contamination. And John Sudworth was reporting from Tianjin. Another blast elsewhere in the world, this one being claimed by Islamic State and killed dozens. The Islamic State has claimed that it was responsible for the truck bomb which exploded in northeastern Baghdad, killing at least 59 people. You'll hear in this video report that the blast tore through the crowded Jamia market in the predominantly Shia district of Sadr City. BBC's Arabic's Murad Shishani told Lucy Hawkins of the strategy that the militant group is using.
Islamic State, Lucy, were obsessed with the thing of expanding territorially. That's why we haven't heard that. But this wave seems to be something renewing, something coming new, yes. But however, if you look to the statistics that Islamic State themselves present, that they resort to such attacks, the parked vehicle bombs, in 2012 just 50 to 60 times. But in 2013, it raised up to 300. In 2014, up to the 600, which means when they expand territorially, they were being able to get access to more source, more income that they can fund these operations. This telling us that how IS is switching between two tactics, like expanding geographically, but due to the airstrikes from Americans, they started now to resort to such attacks.
All right, friends, and in today's news, there's dealings regarding Greece. The Greece Parliament is due to meet earlier today and vote on the country's latest bailout deal, the deal that they had reached with creditors after all-night talks 2 days ago on Tuesday. Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras said he was optimistic he can get Parliament to approve the arrangement, but it still has to be agreed by Eurozone members. The BBC's Paul Adams reports from Athens.
The stage is set for another showdown in the Greek Parliament. For the latest deal to work, MPs must immediately pass legislation on tax rebates, benefits and perks for public servants. Many of these so-called prior actions are deeply unpopular and will be fiercely resisted. But the Prime Minister says he's confident of success, despite opposition inside his own party. He says the deal will finally bring economic uncertainty to an end.
Και παρά τις πολύ μεγάλες δυσκολίες,
despite the great difficulties that we had throughout this period, despite the obstacles that some people, even now, seem intent on placing before us, I'm optimistic and remain optimistic that we will get to an agreement and receive loan support from the European mechanism, which will put an end to economic uncertainty.
The Greek economy is still reeling. The past 8 months have done nothing to restore confidence in a country battered by years of recession. The latest deal reduces Greece's surplus targets over the next 3 years by as much as 20 billion euros, a modest concession by creditors. But new growth figures due out today are likely to show just how challenging even these revised targets will be. Paul Adams, BBC News.
And friends, the former finance minister in today's news was saying that even if they approve the bailout deal, it's not going to work for Greece. And there are others saying and recognizing that too. There are some in Germany even saying it's not going to work, recognizing it won't work. And one of the biggest things is even before what they've already been given as bailouts or loaned as bailouts, they'll never be able to repay what they've already received, and this new amount, if approved, that they're given, that just adds to what they'll never be able to pay back. So we continue to watch this one daily and the impact and effect it'll wind up having on the EU, and perhaps being a factor that will cause the EU just to come together all the more and the sooner. This crisis, the one in Ukraine, and another financial crisis we told you about last night, currency fluctuations. That doesn't look like that's going to be I think something's out of order, maybe out of order, but let me just tell you this information I have from news from last night. Currency fluctuations from China are in the news this week. But imagine having foreign notes. Oh yeah, this story is going to relate because we're talking about Hong Kong going all the way back to World War time. Imagine having foreign notes which you can't exchange. A group of elderly people in Hong Kong faced just that problem. For 70 years, they've been stuck with military yen, which they were forced to use during the Japanese occupation of World War II. Lim Yinbun tells the BBC about his long campaign to get his money back.
Hong Kong under siege. Japanese films show the bombardment of the island from Kowloon.
My name is Lam Yun Bun and I'm 88 years old. When the Japanese attacked Hong Kong, I was 14. I have about 100,000 military yen. When the Japanese army took over, they immediately forced people to exchange their money for military yen. If you refused, and if they found Hong Kong dollars on you or found it in your home, they would just cut off your head, no question. This is 100 military yen. It's the largest bill. Everything was so expensive and inflation was rising and rising because the yen was actually worthless. There was no work and there was no school. Every day I had to struggle to look for work to support my parents. Before the invasion, my parents ran a small grocery store, but they had to sell it during the occupation. That's how I got my 100,000 yen from my parents.
British and Allied chiefs assemble in Hong Kong for the Japanese surrender. Hong Kong is in British hands again.
When we heard on the radio that Hong Kong was safe again, we were all so happy, but we didn't know how to exchange the military yen for Hong Kong dollars. No one knew what to do. The Japanese had just left. I want to ask the Japanese people to exchange the military yen. That's all I want. But the Prime Minister, Shinzo Abe, is so stubborn. It would be wonderful if this could happen while I'm still living. I'd be so happy. And I might even go to Japan to spend it.
All right, friends, the security services in Myanmar, our next story out of Myanmar, have carried out a raid on the headquarters of the military-backed ruling party in Myanmar. Shaw Man, who used to be part of the military council that ruled the country, has been ousted from his position, according to the ruling Union Solidarity and Development Party, the Union Solidarity and Development Party. Jonathan Head reports from Bangkok.
Shui Man has long had been in a kind of state of rivalry with President Thein Sein ever since this reform process started in Myanmar about 4 years ago. Thein Sein was then chosen by the military to be president. Shui Man was a very ambitious and capable member of the old military regime who had ambitions of his own. And instead, they're both from the ruling party. They're not from the opposition at all. But Shui Man built up a power base inside the party. The president wasn't allowed to run the party, and inside Parliament. He's made the new Myanmar Parliament really much his base and made it very effective and had a very high profile. Now we have an absolutely landmark election coming up in November, the first properly free election, or is expected to be in Myanmar in many decades. And it was expected that Shui Man would be possibly the ruling party's candidate and that he was a prime candidate to replace President Thein Sein. He does have serious opponents inside the party, though, and in particular inside the still very powerful military. It seems they've now made a move against him just before the ruling party names or finalises its candidate list. And he is, we believed being held under some form of house arrest. At least his house is surrounded by security forces. He's been replaced, so have many of his allies. It seems that more conservative forces in the ruling party, allied closely to the military, have now taken control, although there's still not really quite clear what's going on. But that looks like the picture at the moment, and that'll be the party that goes forward into the election, of course, to fight against opposition leader Aung San Suu Kyi and her National League for Democracy, which is expected to do very well in those elections.
Okay, friends, and in our next story, scuffles have broken out between police and protesters in Paris during a day-long urban beach festival dedicated to the Israeli city of Tel Aviv. The decision to link the event to the city has been criticized by left-wing and pro-Palestinian critics who say it condones Israeli government policy. Around 100 demonstrators clapped and chanted while standing behind a cloth barrier reading "Apartheid on sign" or seen. The mayor of Paris had refused to cancel the festival, saying a city should not be punished for the actions of the government.
C'est bon?
Okay, friends, and there's no commentary other than the lead-in information I had for you with this video, just footage of the protesters shouting and chanting their slogans. All right, let's go on to our next story. This one, I got a little lighter one for you next, thankfully. Comet 67P has passed its closest point to the sun, 115 million miles, or the equivalent of 186 million kilometers away. The landmark moment was captured by the European spacecraft Rosetta, which has been flying alongside the comet for the past year. David Schuckman reports.
The dramatic sight of a comet tumbling through space, the clearest view we've ever had of a comet's tail forming, from the gas and dust flowing off it, along with water, enough to fill 10 Olympic pools every day. A strange world changing before our eyes as it flies near the sun. This is potentially the most crucial stage of the whole mission. The comet is on an orbit that takes it from way out beyond Jupiter, swinging in towards the centre of the solar system every 6 years. And today it's passing about 115 million miles from the sun. Being this close means the comet is heating up. Jets of gas and dust are blasting out of it, forming the tail, the feature that makes comets so distinctive. Now, what's amazing is that for the past year, the Rosetta spacecraft has been flying right alongside the comet. It has a ringside seat at what could be the most dramatic moment, the first close-up look at how a comet actually evolves. Already, the dust billowing off it has been growing and accelerating. Now, spare a thought for the little lander Philae, on the surface of the comet since last November. Nothing's been heard from it for a while, and the intense heat right now may finish it off. This mission was always going to be risky, but already it's told us what comets are made of and how this one has the chemical compounds useful for getting life started. When the lander touched down last November, Professor Monica Grady was among the scientists overwhelmed with the achievement. And today, she's still enthusiastic about what they're finding out.
We have never been this close to a comet when it is at its closest point to the sun. We have never learned this sort of information before. It is absolutely amazing. The images, the data, the gas, the dust, the tail, the surface, wonderful.
A boulder flies off the comet. There is a chance the whole thing could break up. Whatever happens, for the first time, we'll have cameras ready to see it. David Shrookman, BBC News.
All right, friends, and we're going to let that end our program for this Thursday night, ending on something kind of nice to see the ladies' enthusiasm, was it not? All right, hopefully there were things in the news that will enable us to do as Jesus Christ said, to be watching and praying about these things that happen, praying from the bottom of our hearts that the people affected, praying for them and praying, thy kingdom come. We're off until Sunday night, friends. We're not on Friday night and Saturday night. As many of you know, I am here on a different channel on the weekend on Saturdays, on the Sabbath with the Sabbath service, Sabbath.tv service. Otherwise, God willing and the creek don't rise, we'll be back for our next edition of Nightcast Sunday night. Until next time, friends, your host, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth, saying thanks for joining me. So long and good night.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on cogtv.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the cogtv.org video archive.